The sergeant towered over her, his shadow eclipsing the morning sun. The other recruits watched, smirking as he grabbed her collar and slammed her into the mud. They had all seen this before, the ritual humiliation of whoever he deemed weakest. For 3 weeks, she'd endured his targeted abuse without complaint. But something changed in her eyes as she lay there, covered in mud and rain. Something dangerous awakened. What happened next would alter the course of their military careers forever. Dawn breaks over Fort Ironwood Military Training Facility. Rain pelts the faces of 24 recruits standing at rigid attention, their bodies already fatigued from the 4 a.m. wake-up call. This is no ordinary boot camp. Fort Ironwood boasts a 70% dropout rate and produces the military's most elite soldiers. Among the rigid formations, Arya Sterling stands slightly apart, not physically, but in essence. At 5 feet 5 inches with a slender build, she lacks the imposing presence of her fellow recruits. While others flinch as Drill Sergeant Harlan Voss barks orders inches from their faces, Arya's expression remains impassive, almost detached. Voss, a bull of a man with 20 years of combat experience etched into the lines of his weathered face, patrols the line with predatory focus. He stops at Arya, eyes narrowing. "Sterling," he bellows. "You're standing like you're at a tea party. This isn't finishing school for a fraction of a second." Arya's mind flashes elsewhere. A crystal chandelier, diplomatic uniforms, her in an elegant black dress, observing 2 officials exchange something beneath a table. Her face betrays nothing as the memory fades. "Yes, Sergeant," she responds quietly. Behind her, several recruits exchange smirks. Jax Harlan, broad-shouldered with an easy confidence that speaks of privilege, leans toward his bunkmate. $10 says Sterling doesn't last the week, he whispers. The morning unfolds into a brutal obstacle course. Recruits haul themselves over walls, swing across mud pits, and crawl under barbed wire. Arya visibly struggles with the upper body challenges, her arms trembling as she attempts to climb the rope. Eventually sliding down with rope burns on her palms. "Pathetic Sterling," Voss shouts. "My grandmother climbs faster and she's been dead for 15 years. The other recruits stifle laughter, not wanting to draw Voss's attention to themselves. Arya accepts the criticism without visible reaction, picking herself up and moving to the next station with mechanical efficiency. That evening in the mess hall, Arya sits alone, methodically consuming the bland military rations. The table around her remains empty until 2 female recruits, Willow Kane and Sable Reed, reluctantly take seats when all other tables fill. "So what's your story, Sterling?" Willow asks, not unkindly. "You don't exactly scream military material." Arya looks up from her tray. "Just wanted to serve," she offers vaguely. Her eyes track a lieutenant passing through the hall with unusual focus before returning to her food. "Right," Sable says, unconvinced. "Most people with doctorates don't suddenly decide to enlist. They become officers." Arya's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. "What makes you think I have a doctorate?" Sable shrugs. "The way you talk, the vocabulary you use when you forget to dumb it down. The books I've seen you reading during break." Arya offers a small, noncommittal smile and changes the subject. "How are you finding the training so far?" The conversation shifts to safer ground, but Willow and Sable exchange a look that says they're not fooled by Arya's deflection. Later that night, while others sleep, Arya tends to her blistered hands with practiced efficiency, applying antiseptic and tape with the precision of someone familiar with injury care. As she reaches into her bag for more supplies, a letter falls out, addressed to Dr. Arya Sterling, Department of Linguistics. She quickly tucks it away, glancing around to ensure no one saw. Willow, returning from the bathroom, catches a glimpse but says nothing, her suspicions confirmed. The days blend together in a grueling rhythm of physical exertion, mental challenges and constant pressure. While other recruits form bonds through shared suffering, Arya remains on the periphery, observing more than participating. Voss's attention to her never wavers, his criticism growing more pointed as she continues to perform adequately but never exceptionally. "Sterling," he announces one day during firearms training. Your shooting stance looks like you're posing for a fashion magazine. This isn't a photo shoot. The range falls silent as everyone turns to watch. Arya adjusts her position slightly, but something in her eyes suggests she could correct it perfectly if she wanted to. Like this, Sergeant? She asks, adopting a stance that's marginally better, but still not correct. Voss's face darkens. No, like this. He demonstrates with exaggerated movements, as if teaching a child. Has anyone ever told you that you're unteachable, Sterling? Not that I recall, Sergeant, she replies, her voice neutral, but her eyes challenging. Voss holds her gaze for a long moment before moving on to the next recruit. Jax, watching from 2 lanes over, reassesses his earlier judgment of Arya. There's something about her that doesn't quite add up. 3 weeks into training, Voss leads the platoon on a 15-mile march through driving rain. While he carries only a light pack, the recruits struggle under 60 pounds of gear. The trail has turned to slick mud, making each step treacherous. Jax, for all his bravado, begins to falter. His ankle turns on a hidden route. And he stumbles forward, about to fall face first into the mud. Without drawing attention, Arya subtly shifts position, briefly supporting his weight until he regains balance. Voss notices immediately. Sterling, you think this is a charity run? Drop and give me 50 right here, right now. The platoon continues marching as Arya drops into the mud, executing perfect push-ups despite the conditions. When she finishes, she rises and sprints to catch up with the group. Her face betraying no resentment or fatigue. Thanks, Jax murmurs when she falls into step beside him. I owe you one. No, you don't, Arya replies simply. We're a unit. That's what we do. The words are standard military philosophy, but something in her tone makes Jax wonder if she's testing him, measuring his response against some hidden standard. That afternoon, the real test begins hand-to-hand combat training. A chance for Voss to establish total dominance. Sterling, front and center, Voss commands, a dangerous smile playing on his lips. Let's show everyone what happens when you don't have what it takes. The entire platoon forms a circle around them. Rain continues to fall, turning the training ground into a muddy arena. Voss circles Arya like a predator, the platoon watching with a mixture of anticipation and discomfort. Some, like Jax, look away. The outcome seems predetermined, the humiliation unnecessary. 3 weeks, Voss says, loud enough for everyone to hear. And you still move like a civilian. Maybe you should have stayed in whatever soft little life you came from. For just a moment, Arya's mind flashes to a darkened room, her hands moving with blinding speed to disarm an attacker twice her size. A voice crackles through an earpiece. Mission complete, Agent Sterling. The memory vanishes as Voss lunges forward without warning, grabbing Arya's collar and shoulder, using his superior weight to slam her hard into the mud. The impact knocks the wind from her lungs and water splashes up around her body. Laughter ripples through the platoon, nervous, uncomfortable, but present. Voss stands over her, feet planted on either side of her mud-covered form. This is what weakness looks like, recruits, he announces triumphantly. This is what happens when you don't belong. Something changes in Arya's eyes. The docile recruit vanishes, replaced by something cold, calculating, and infinitely dangerous. Her hand shoots out with snake-like precision, gripping Voss's ankle at exactly the pressure point that sends shock waves of pain up his leg. In one fluid motion that seems to defy physics, she sweeps his supporting leg while simultaneously rolling her body to create leverage. Voss, all 200 pounds of him, crashes down with such force that mud sprays in a 6-foot radius. Before he can process what's happening, Arya has reversed their positions completely, applying a joint lock that immobilizes him with minimal effort. Her technique is flawless, the kind that comes from thousands of hours of practice. Absolute silence falls over the training ground. Even the rain seems to pause. The first rule of combat assessment, Sergeant Arya says calmly, her voice carrying clearly to every stunned recruit. Never underestimate your opponent based on appearance. She releases him and stands at perfect attention, covered in mud but composed, as if awaiting further instructions. Voss rises slowly, his face flushed with a dangerous mixture of humiliation and rage. His mouth opens to deliver what would undoubtedly be a career-ending tirade when a commanding voice cuts through the silence. "That's quite enough, Sergeant Voss." General Elias Thorne, silver-haired with the quiet confidence of someone who never needs to raise his voice to command a room, steps forward from the crowd. No one had noticed him observing the entire scene. "Sir," Voss stammers. "I was just demonstrating." "I saw precisely what you were demonstrating, Sergeant." Thorne interrupts, "And I believe Lieutenant Colonel Sterling has made her point quite effectively." Gasps ripple through the assembled recruits. Confusion replaces shock on their faces as they process the revelation. Thorne turns to address the platoon. "What you've just witnessed, recruits, is perhaps the most valuable lesson you'll receive during your time at Fort Ironwood." He gestures toward Arya. "Lieutenant Colonel Arya Sterling is one of our most decorated intelligence operatives. For the past 3 weeks, she has undergone your training from the beginning, enduring everything you have and considerable additional targeting to assess our current training protocols." Voss stands frozen, the realization of what he's done slowly dawning on him. Thorne continues. "Your report was correct, Colonel. We have serious vulnerabilities in how we evaluate recruit potential." "Sir, I didn't," Voss begins. Thorne cuts him off with a raised hand. "Sometimes the most valuable soldiers aren't the ones who yell the loudest, Sergeant. They're the ones who observe, adapt, and wait for the precise moment to act." His gaze sweeps over the recruits. "Remember this day? The face of warfare is changing. Brute strength alone won't win the battles ahead." That evening, Arya packs her few belongings in the barracks. Her mission complete, she'll return to her actual duties by morning. The door creaks open, and she turns to find Willow and Sable standing awkwardly in the doorway. "May we come in, ma'am?" Willow asks, the ma'am awkward on her lips after weeks of casual interaction. Arya nods. "You don't have to call me that when we're alone." The women enter cautiously, as if approaching a creature they thought they knew but suddenly discovered was something else entirely. "You could have taken him down any time," Willow says, finally. "Why wait and endure weeks of his bullying?" Arya sets down the shirt she was folding because this wasn't about Voss, it was about all of you. She explains that military selection has become too focused on aggression and physical dominance, missing crucial skills like resilience, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence. "The enemies we face now don't always wear uniforms or march in formation," she continues. "They hide in plain sight like I did, and the soldiers who will stop them might not look like traditional warriors." "Is that what you do?" Sable asks. "Intelligence work." Arya's smile is enigmatic. "Let's just say I've found my particular skills are valuable in certain contexts." "So what happens now?" Willow wonders. "Training protocols change," Arya answers, "and recruits like you who noticed things weren't right but kept going anyway. Get the respect and proper assessment you deserve." A shadow appears in the doorway. Sergeant Voss stands there, his usual imposing presence diminished. He's freshly showered, uniform, impeccable, as if trying to reclaim some dignity. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then he straightens his spine and offers a crisp, perfect salute. "Colonel Sterling," he says formally, "I request permission to review your findings to become a better instructor." Arya studies him, seeing past the bravado to the soldier underneath. A man who, for all his flaws, believes in serving something greater than himself. She returns the salute with equal precision. "Approved, Sergeant. We begin tomorrow." The next morning, Arya enters the officers' quarters, where General Thorne waits with several other high-ranking officials. The atmosphere is tense, filled with the unspoken recognition that Fort Ironwood's training methods need significant reform. Lieutenant Colonel Thorne greets her. "Your demonstration yesterday was quite effective, perhaps more dramatic than I anticipated, but the point was made." "Thank you, sir," Arya responds. "I believe Sergeant Voss received the message as well. He's requested to review my findings." Thorne raises an eyebrow. That's unexpected. Do you think he's sincere? Yes, sir. Beneath the bluster, he cares about producing effective soldiers. He's just been operating under an outdated paradigm. Very well. Thorne gestures to the chair across from him. Let's discuss your full assessment. Arya takes a seat and opens her tablet. My primary concern is our selection bias. We're filtering out potentially valuable recruits based on outdated physical metrics. Strength matters, of course, but not at the expense of adaptability, problem-solving, and psychological resilience. The briefing continues for hours as Arya presents her observations, complete with data from previous operations. Where diverse skill sets proved critical to mission success, the officers listen with growing concern as she outlines specific vulnerabilities in their training protocols. The most troubling aspect, she concludes, is how predictable our selection process has become. Any adversary studying our methods would know exactly what kind of soldier we're producing and how to counter them. What do you recommend? Asks General Langford, the most senior officer present. A complete overhaul of the evaluation metrics, Arya replies without hesitation. Integration of cognitive assessment alongside physical testing, and most importantly, instructors who recognize that the strongest soldier isn't always the loudest or the most physically imposing. That's where Voss comes in, Thorne realizes. Arya nods. If we can change his perspective, we change the culture. He has immense influence over the training cadre. Later that afternoon, Arya meets Voss in a small conference room, away from the curious eyes of the recruits. The sergeant sits rigidly, his discomfort evident, but his determination clear. Thank you for coming, Sergeant, Arya begins, setting aside the formality of their ranks to establish a more collaborative tone. I owe you an apology, ma'am, Voss says stiffly. My behavior was unprofessional. This isn't about apologies, Arya responds. It's about evolution. The battlefield has changed, Sergeant. Our training needs to change with it. For the next 2 hours, they review video footage from Arya's 3 weeks in training, pausing at key moments where potential was overlooked or misjudged. Voss watches with growing unease as he sees himself repeatedly dismiss recruits who didn't fit his preconceived notion of a soldier. Here, Arya points to footage of a slight female recruit struggling with a heavy equipment carry. What do you see? Recruit Nova failing to complete the objective, Voss answers automatically. Look closer, Arya challenges. Watch how she approaches the problem. Upon review, Voss notices what he'd missed before. While Nova couldn't match the brute strength of her peers, she had improvised a leverage system using her belt and a nearby post to reduce the effective weight. She's problem-solving, he acknowledges grudgingly. Exactly in the field. That kind of adaptive thinking saves lives, but under our current system, she'll wash out before week 4. They continue through dozens of examples, Voss's perspective gradually shifting as patterns emerge. By evening, his defensiveness has given way to genuine concern. We're missing them, he says, finally. The quiet ones, the thinkers, the ones who might actually win the next war. Yes, Arya agrees simply. And it's not entirely your fault. The system was designed this way, but you can help change it. Voss looks at her with newfound respect. What's the first step? You tell me, Sergeant. You know this training facility better than anyone. Voss considers for a moment. We start with the instructors, change their mindset first, then revise the evaluation criteria. Arya smiles. That's exactly what I was thinking. Over the next week, Arya leads a comprehensive review of Fort Ironwood's training methodology. Working alongside Voss, she introduces new assessment tools that measure cognitive flexibility, emotional intelligence, and strategic thinking alongside physical capabilities. Initially, the other instructors resist clinging to traditional metrics they understand, but when Voss, their respected leader, throws his full support behind the changes, the tide begins to turn. I was wrong, Voss tells them during a candid briefing. We've been training soldiers for yesterday's wars, not tomorrow's. Colonel Sterling showed me that in about 5 seconds when she put me on my back in the mud. The room fills with uncomfortable laughter, but the message lands. If Harlan Voss can admit he was wrong and adapt, so can they. By the second week, the transformation is underway. Recruits previously on the verge of washing out find themselves excelling in new challenge scenarios designed to test creative thinking and teamwork. Jax, whose physical prowess had always been his primary asset, struggles initially with the more nuanced evaluations. "I don't get it," he confesses to Arya after a particularly frustrating strategy exercise. "I've always been at the top. Now I'm barely middle of the pack." "That's because we're measuring different things now," Arya explains. "But you can adapt, Harlan. I've seen you do it. Remember that moment on the march when you accepted help instead of falling? That was wisdom, not weakness. Jax considers this. So I need to think beyond just myself and my capabilities." Exactly. The best leaders know when to lead and when to follow someone with different strengths. As the training evolves, so do the relationships within the platoon. Hierarchies based solely on physical dominance give way to more complex networks of respect based on complementary skills. Willow, with her exceptional spatial awareness, becomes the go-to tactician for group exercises. Everly's photographic memory proves invaluable during intelligence briefings. Even Voss transforms, his instruction becoming more nuanced as he learns to spot potential in its various forms. He still demands excellence. But his definition of what constitutes excellence has expanded dramatically. 1 month after Arya's revelation, General Thorne visits the training grounds to assess progress. What he finds impresses him, a cohesive unit where diverse talents are recognized and leveraged effectively. "Your work here is nearly done, Lieutenant Colonel," he tells Arya as they observe a complex problem-solving exercise. The changes are taking root. There's still resistance in some quarters, Arya notes. Change never comes easily, especially to an institution this traditional. True, Thorne acknowledges. But you've created momentum, and having Voss as an advocate has been crucial. They watch as Voss guides a recruit through a tactical decision with surprising patience, focusing on process rather than immediate results. "He's a different instructor now," Arya observes. "People can surprise you when given the chance," Thorne replies. "Speaking of which, I have new orders for you, something. That builds on what you've accomplished here." He hands her a sealed folder. "We're expanding this initiative. Fort Ironwood is just the beginning. We need to implement similar reforms across all training facilities, and we need someone with first-hand experience to lead the effort." Arya opens the folder, scanning the contents with growing interest. "This is a significant promotion, sir." "Well earned," Thorne assures her. "But before you accept, there's something else you should know." He hesitates, uncharacteristically uncertain. The resistance to these changes goes beyond a few stubborn instructors. There are those in high command who believe we're weakening the force, making us vulnerable. "That's to be expected," Arya responds. "Change always meets resistance. This is more than routine bureaucratic pushback," Thorne warns. "There's an organized effort to discredit the program and anyone associated with it. Taking this position puts you directly in their crosshairs." Arya closes the folder, her decision already made. "With respect, sir, I've been in crosshairs before. Usually those targeting me regret it." Thorne smiles slightly. "Just like Sergeant Voss did." "Exactly like that," Arya confirms. "Only next time, I won't wait 3 weeks to make my point." 6 months later, a new group of diverse recruits arrives at Fort Ironwood. Among them are faces that would never have made it past the first week in the old system. A slender woman with the watchful eyes of a tactician, a slight man whose fingers suggest he's more comfortable with technology than weapons. Voss and Arya, now in her officer's uniform with the appropriate insignia, watch side by side from the observation platform. "That one in the back row," Voss notes, nodding toward a recruit who barely meets the height requirement. "Old me would have broken her first day." Arya smiles slightly. And now Voss's weathered face shows the beginning of wisdom. Now I wonder what she might be capable of that I can't see yet. The transformation in Fort Ironwood's training program has been remarkable, but not without challenges. Resistance from traditional military circles has grown more organized, with several high-ranking officers openly questioning the wisdom of what they call the soft approach. The latest memo from General Caldwell calls it experimental and potentially dangerous to national security, General Thorne informs Arya during their weekly briefing. He's requesting a congressional review. Arya remains unfazed. Let them review. The results speak for themselves. Our completion rates are up 23%, and the quality metrics on graduate performance are unprecedented. Facts don't always win political battles, Thorne cautions. Then we'll have to be more persuasive, Arya responds, already formulating a strategy. Invite Caldwell to observe the final qualification exercise next week. Let him see firsthand what we've built here. Thorne looks skeptical. You think that will change his mind? No, Arya admits. But it will make it harder for him to dismiss us publicly when he's seen what these recruits can do. The day of the final qualification exercise arrives with clear skies and a brisk wind. General Caldwell and his entourage stand rigidly on the observation platform, their skepticism evident in every line of their bodies. This is highly irregular, General Thorne, Caldwell comments as they wait for the exercise to begin. Combat effectiveness cannot be measured through role-playing games. With respect, General, this is far from a game, Thorne responds. The scenario these recruits are about to face integrates all aspects of modern warfare, from kinetic engagement to cyber operations to psychological elements. Caldwell makes a dismissive sound. Warfare is ultimately about force meeting force, General. Always has been, always will be. Perhaps you should reserve judgment until after the demonstration, sir, Arya suggests politely. The exercise begins with a simulated hostage situation in an urban environment. Traditional military protocol would suggest overwhelming force, but the platoon takes a different approach. Under Jax's leadership, they divide into specialized teams, each leveraging different strengths. Willow's team establishes a perimeter, while Sable's group infiltrates digitally, disabling security systems and gathering intelligence. The slender woman Voss had pointed out earlier proves to be a gifted negotiator, establishing communication with the hostage-takers while other teams move into position. What are they doing? Caldwell demands. They should be preparing for breach and clear. They're gathering information first, Voss explains, understanding the situation before committing to action. The operation unfolds with remarkable precision. When force becomes necessary, it's applied surgically, minimizing collateral damage. The hostages are secured with 0 casualties on either side. Impressive coordination, one of Caldwell's aides admits grudgingly. This was a controlled environment, Caldwell counters. Real combat is chaotic, unpredictable. You're absolutely right, General, Arya agrees, which is why the second phase introduces random variables unknown to both the recruits and their instructors. At her signal, a series of unexpected challenges activate, from communication failures to simulated civilian interference. The platoon adapts in real time, reorganizing their approach without missing a beat. They're resilient, Thorne observes. That's what this program builds, soldiers who can think through problems, not just power through them. By the end of the demonstration, even Caldwell's rigid expression has softened slightly. While not entirely convinced, he's at least thoughtful, which Arya counts as progress. Your recruits performed adequately, he acknowledges during the debriefing. But I remain concerned about physical standards. When a soldier needs to carry a wounded comrade off the battlefield, theoretical problem solving won't suffice. I couldn't agree more, General, Arya responds, surprising him. Physical capability remains essential. We haven't lowered those standards. We've contextualized them alongside other critical skills. She pulls up performance data on a nearby screen. Our graduates match or exceed traditional metrics in endurance and strength. The difference is that we've expanded our definition of what makes an effective soldier. Caldwell studies the data with narrowed eyes. I'll need to verify these numbers independently. Of course, Arya agrees readily. Transparency is fundamental to our approach. After Caldwell and his entourage depart, Thorne turns to Arya with a wry smile. You managed that better than I expected. He's not convinced yet, Arya cautions, but he's questioning his assumptions, which is a start. You've done remarkable work here, Lieutenant Colonel, Thorne says. But I think we both know your talents are needed elsewhere now, Arya nods, having anticipated this conversation. The other training facilities? Yes, but not just as an advisor. We're establishing a new command specifically focused on next-generation warfare preparation. I've recommended you to lead it. Arya absorbs this information, recognizing both the opportunity and the challenge it represents. That will ruffle even more feathers than what we've done here. Undoubtedly, Thorne agrees, which is precisely why you're the right person for it. You've proven you can change minds from within the system. Later that evening, Arya finds Voss in the training yard, running a small group of instructors through the new evaluation protocols. She watches silently for a moment, still sometimes surprised by his transformation. When the session concludes, he approaches her with a knowing look. So you're leaving us. News travels fast, Arya remarks. In a place like this, lightning speed, he gestures toward the now empty training yard. What happens to all this when you go? It continues, Arya says confidently. Because it doesn't depend on me anymore. It depends on instructors like you who believe in it. Voss nods, accepting the responsibility. I never properly thanked you, you know. For what? For showing me I was wrong. Not many people could have done that. Arya smiles slightly. You did the hard part, Sergeant. You were willing to change. The next morning, Arya addresses the assembled recruits and instructors for the last time. The atmosphere is solemn, but proud, a community aware of what they've built together. When I first came to Fort Ironwood, she begins. I saw a training system preparing soldiers for yesterday's wars. Today I see a program building warriors for tomorrow's challenges. That transformation wasn't my doing alone. It happened because each of you was willing to question old assumptions and embrace new possibilities. She looks out at the faces before her. Lingering on those who might never have made it through the old system, some will say we've weakened the military by expanding our definition of strength. They're wrong. We've strengthened it by recognizing that true power comes in many forms, and the most formidable force is one that harnesses all of them. Her gaze finds Jack standing tall among his peers. I leave Fort Ironwood in capable hands, hands that understand that sometimes the strongest person in the room isn't the one who can bench press the most weight, but the one who can adapt, think critically, and lead with both courage and compassion. After the ceremony, Jax approaches Arya as she prepares to depart. They're making me an instructor, he tells her, still sounding surprised by the development. I know, Arya replies. I recommended you. Me? Jax looks genuinely confused. But I was one of the worst examples of the old way of thinking. Exactly, Arya says, which makes you one of the best advocates for the new approach. You've experienced both sides and can speak to the difference. Understanding dawns on Jax's face. That's why you did it, isn't it? The whole demonstration with Voss. You needed someone from the inside to validate the changes. Change rarely comes from outside, Harlan. It happens when those within the system recognize the need for it. Jax straightens, accepting the challenge. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Arya says with confidence. Just remember what you learned here. Look for strength in all its forms, not just the obvious ones. 1 year later, Fort Ironwood has become the model for military training across all branches of service. The program Arya pioneered has expanded to 5 additional facilities, each adapting the core principles to their specific needs. General Caldwell, once the program's most vocal critic, has become a cautious supporter after several of the graduates distinguished themselves in complex operations abroad. The congressional review he initiated ended with increased funding rather than restrictions. Arya, now a full colonel, oversees the strategic implementation from the Pentagon, working to ensure that the changes take root throughout the military culture. It's challenging work, with resistance still emerging from unexpected quarters, but the momentum is undeniable. During a rare visit back to Fort Ironwood, she watches a new class of recruits tackle the final qualification exercise. The diversity among them is striking, not just in physical appearance, but in approach and thinking style. Voss joins her on the observation platform, now the head instructor for the entire facility. "Quite a change from when you first arrived," he comments. "For the better," Arya responds, watching a team of recruits solve a complex challenge through collaboration rather than brute force. "We received applications from 3 other countries last week," Voss informs her. "They want to implement in similar programs." Arya nods, unsurprised. The future of warfare is changing. Those who adapt first gain the advantage. As they watch, a slight female recruit, reminiscent of Arya herself, takes command of a difficult situation, her quiet authority immediately respected by her peers. It's a small moment, but symbolically powerful. "They say you're being considered for general," Voss mentions casually. "There's still work to be done before that happens," Arya deflects. "Maybe," Voss acknowledges. "But when it does, remember where it started." "In the mud," Arya says with a small smile, with a sergeant who thought he knew everything about strength and a lieutenant colonel who proved him wrong. Voss completes the thought, no longer bothered by the memory. As the exercise concludes successfully, Jax gathers the recruits for debriefing. His teaching style blends the best of the old discipline with the new emphasis on adaptive thinking. "Look to your left, look to your right," he tells them, echoing words that have been spoken for generations, but with a new meaning. The person you least expect might be the one who saves your life someday. The camera pans to a wall of honor, showing Arya's photo among other distinguished officers, those who changed the system from within. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Jax asks the recruits, but his words seem directed at the audience as well. Those are the people who change everything when they finally reveal their true strength. As the new recruits disperse to begin their final preparations, the camera lingers on a fresh-faced recruit who reminds us of Arya in the beginning. Quiet, observant, underestimated. The cycle begins again, but this time with eyes wide open. If you enjoyed the story, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.